with your skirt. And the belt that you tie it with had these fabric tassels and then patchwork. But this is very traditional. So you see some of the bags in this photo on the right. From that little area in the center of Estonia, we then got on a bus and we went to a ferry to take us to the island of Kinu, which is, so I teach up at Seaver School of Fiber Arts on Washington Island. It's about half the size of Washington Island. It's maybe 2 miles wide by 4 miles long, something like that. So we were on this island. The bus that we were in wasn't big enough to take over with us. We couldn't get the bus on the ferry. It was too big. And the roads on island of Kinu are dirt. And so they had 2 trucks that picked us up. You could fit about 20 people in the back of that truck. They had wooden benches along the sides. And they would take like half of us at a time, and we got tours of the island, which isn't that big. And then they come back and they get the other people and take them on a little tour of the island. More eating outdoors. This, all of our meals here were at this place, which is outdoors, so no matter what the weather is, there were little kind of huts over us to protect you if it was raining a little bit. But we had pretty good weather, although I do remember one group that had their tour, when they had their tour in those trucks, open air trucks, it rained during part of one of the tours. So the weather's variable. Again, it might rain for 15 minutes and then it's dry, so you just have to be ready for changes in weather. We had an evening with the ladies on the island who were knitting and also playing music and dancing. And you can see the woman who's playing accordion, you can see her skirt. It's a striped skirt. And usually a lot of red in the skirt, but also dark colors. Depending on your situation in life, the color of your skirt changes. So you have, and they're wool skirts. You have more than one skirt. If you're widowed, you're wearing a very dark skirt, mostly black and blue and a little bit of red around the bottom. If you're coming out of mourning, okay, you get to add a little more red in. If you're young, you're going to have reds and pinks and things like that. So here's the young women on the island. So they are wearing blue jeans and stuff in life, but it's still sort of tradition to wear the skirts. So they were in skirts for the evening that we saw them. And they're not wearing the aprons on the front, so you see the skirts a little bit more. And they're weaving, right? One of them's weaving, some are knitting. The guy playing one of the accordions was wearing what's called a Kinu Troy sweater. The sweater I'm wearing, this is the one that's in the picture there. It's a guy's sweater, would be a guy's sweater. I knit this one because I really like them, and I'm not Estonian, so I can wear the sweater because, yeah. But otherwise, over there, it's a men's sweater. I will tell you that just recently, I saw some postings on Facebook from a group that I belong to. The women are knitting dresses using the Kinu Troy designs. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that's fun. So they're, it might be V-neck or kind of a boat neck or a crew neck. But I saw a bunch of women that were knitting dresses. So I was like, see, I'm not the only one who's female that thinks these sweaters are cool and want to wear one myself. We went on the island. There's this woman named Kinu Rusi. There's been a number of books written about her, and mittens that she has knit are included in these books. And she has like a museum in her home or in the building next to her home or something. So we went to that building and saw her mittens. Here's a sampling of gloves. And I love the way they're displayed, you know, like pattern on pattern. You got all this pattern in the gloves. Usually the fingers of the gloves have a little smaller pattern than the main part of the glove. And then they put them on this carpet that's, yeah. And then here's the selection of mittens, also from the island. While we were there, there were some people in their yards who would put out blankets and put out skirts and sweaters and Kinu Troy, you know, sweaters and skirts and mittens is what I meant to say, for sale. We had 85 people in the group, so I didn't actually get to purchase anything from those particular people because people snapped them up pretty quick. But there was also a small area in one of the buildings that we were in, the community center, and they had some mittens. I was able to get some there. So that was the first trip for the Nordic Knitting Conference. The next time I went was 8 years later, and that was for a conference for sweaters around the Baltic Sea. It took place in basically the same area that I'd been in. Heimtali is outside of a town called Viljandi. Viljandi isn't a real big town, but it's kind of in the center of Estonia. And Viljandi is also the home to the, there's a university, you know, Viljandi, and they have a craft department, cultural academy they call it, and they teach things like traditional fiber techniques, knitting and whatnot. They teach silversmithing in the traditional way. They teach building with logs in a traditional way, and you can get a degree in those areas from the Cultural Academy of the University of Viljandi. So there were island-specific sweaters that we talked about, things like this Kinu Troy sweater. There's quite a few islands, but the bigger ones have their very specific designs that we learned about at this conference. From Hiiumaa is one of the islands. Muhu is one of my favorite islands. Here's an example of Muhu work. They are crazy bright. And then I did a hat. This was a hat I knit based on the motifs that they use. They use the birds and flowers and things like that a lot, and the bright colors. So those are really fun. There's the biggest island is called Saaremaa. Ruunu is another island which a friend of mine had been trying to go to for a few years. She's from Germany, and every time she tried to go, there'd be some problem with the ferry and she wouldn't get there. And she finally made it, I think, last year. Besides learning about the Estonian islands, so the sweaters on the Baltic Sea, we also learned about those sweaters from the Shetland Islands. There was a speaker from the Shetland Islands there, from Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, and from Latvia. There was an exhibit at one of the museums in Viljandi on Muhu cardigans. And just outside that museum, we had a reception one evening, and of course, it was outdoors. They always are. While I was there, this woman, Kristi Joesti, who has written books on knitting, this particular book called Estonian Knitting 1. She is one of the authors of this massive book. And she is a specialist in mittens. And there's a book number 2 on Estonian knitting, that's on socks and stockings. Book number 3 just came out recently. Don't actually have it yet, although I'm picking it up when I go to Estonia this year. Estonian Knitting 3 is on mittens. So I was able to meet with her and actually bought a glove and a mitten from her. Her work is beautiful. This particular one is a traditional pattern from the area around Viljandi. And every round of this, I mean, it's really, I should look and see how many stitches per inch this is. It's got to be at least 12, might be more than that. I should measure and make a note to myself. And every round of this is knit with 3 colors. I've done some 3-color knitting. I prefer 2-color knitting to 3 colors in a round. And I thought, I'm never knitting an entire mitten with 3 colors per round. So that was beautiful. And this one with the entrelac cuff, also knit very finely. And then when I did get home from there, I did knit a mitten. And again, I've got a note somewhere as to how many stitches per inch this is, but it's super fine, but it's two colors per round. This was knit with Nature Spun fingering weight. All right, and some of you might be familiar with the walk and knit that takes place at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival. I brought that to Wisconsin. So when I was in Estonia, the second time, 2013, I was at this event. There was a craft market, and at that craft market, they were going to have a walk and knit. And I thought, well, I want to try that. That sounds like fun. And I'm not an especially fast knitter, actually, but I thought it'd be fun. So I participated. And it was fun. We were out in a field. So at Sheep and Wool, we do it on like a paved surface. They work with double point needles when they do it. And we went to circular when we came here. We're like, okay, we want to get participation. Let's make this as easy as we can. But over there, everybody's knitting with double points. So it was no big deal. So a friend of mine I belong to a spinning guild up in Door County called the Arrrowhead Spinners. And Penny is an artist, and she did the artwork for the walk and knit, the little person walking with the sheep. In the upper picture is me with my 3 teammates in Estonia. And in the bottom picture is a Sheep and Wool Festival photo of people taking off on the walk and knit. So it has been going since 2014. Of course, there was a break 1 or 2 years there for COVID, but it is going strong. I've passed it on to someone else who is running it now for Sheep and Wool. So this is one of my teammates from the walk and knit. I met her that time as a teammate, and got to know her then. And her name is Kuli Jakobsen. She in Estonian, your J's are pronounced like a Y. Anyway, her English is very good. She was married to an American guy. They have a couple kids. They got divorced. The daughter lives with her. I think the son lives with him in the US. Anyway, but she's very nice, and she started running tours. And I've been on a tour with her already in a remote part of Estonia, and she's doing one this year. So I'll be going on that again. She sells mittens. I took a picture of her at a booth at what was called Hanseatic Medieval Days. That took place in the center of Tallinn on the Town Hall Square. And so she's in costume from the Seto region, which is in the area where she lives. and works with the people of the Seto region. And you can find her online, like NordicKnitters.com. I visited an island while I was there. I was on my own when I left after the walk and knit. I took off on my own and got on a bus. I went to the big island of Saaremaa, and I went to little island of Muhu, which you actually travel through Muhu to get to Saaremaa. You take a ferry to Muhu, and then you take a bus, and there's a bridge that connects those two islands. And so I was able to rent a car and travel around a little bit. And the Muhu Island is really, you see all these very decorative painted doors, and is very distinctive, so that's their welcome sign. And here's one of the structures on the island showing you one of those doors. They are known for their embroidery. I bought one little piece, just a little pin cushion, just to show the embroidery. But traditionally, they do it on shoes and wear embroidered shoes. When I was in Viljandi, I saw a dance exhibition, and there was this group that was wearing Muhu skirts and costumes. So the women in the yellow and orange skirts, you saw the bag that I did using orange fabric that I bought over there. That would be traditional skirt fabric. So their traditions are either you have a yellow striped skirt woven, and they're hand woven wool skirts, or this bright orange. And apparently they started doing these bright colors it's related to something that like bombs in the Baltic Sea that they recovered some things from, but it was like they were getting these weird chemicals and then dyeing with them. So now they use things like, I've heard they'll empty out pink neon markers to get the dye from that. They're trying to get these bright colors, the pinks, and the oranges and the yellows. I went to a weaver at one point and did buy one small piece of hand-woven yellow fabric. Didn't bring that one along today, but here's a sample of the skirt. And they have it embroidered around the bottom and then pleated around the top. I will say, I went to Catholic girls' school and we wore pleated skirts, and a lot of people rolled the skirts up. It kind of looks like that around your waist. It's not the most flattering shape right there, but then you're usually wearing something else, so it's okay. I showed you the Estonian Knitting 1 book and mentioned that there's 2 and 3. Oh, missing one of them here. This book, I don't think you can get this one anymore, but Muhu, Designs from Muhu, which is the size of that book, but all on Muhu. The picture in the bottom right, this is Sara Publishing that publishes these books. They tend to publish in Estonian, but then either the book gets printed in Estonian and English, or Estonian, and then they publish another book in English. Because again, their market, if they want to reach people outside of Estonia, they're going to reach it with the English. In the bottom right corner is a picture from Walk and Knit in Estonia. The winning team was 4 people that are authors of books for Sara Publishing. So, like I said, I'm not the fastest knitter. Kuli Jakobsen, if she had been doing the whole thing on my team, we would have won. But they also had me. So this team had 4 super fast knitters. I met a woman named Signa in 2014. I met her through Ravelry. She would comment on Ravelry posts in the Knit Like a Latvian group. And her English was very good, and I saw her knitting, and that was really good. And so I ended up writing her through Ravelry and saying, I'm going to be in Tallinn. Is there any chance we could meet? And we did. and I've been friends with her for almost 10 years now. So every time I go over, I see her, we get together and we do something. She works, I always forget that, anyway, she's like an IT person. Manager, goes from country to country, things like that. But anyway, and she's meticulous knitter. She loves Hapslu lace knitting, which is from one particular area of Estonia, and also loves mitten knitting. So there we are. My husband went on one trip with me to this part of the world. I did a knitting retreat in Latvia. Then he met me and we drove together through Latvia and Estonia and ended up in Tallinn, and he was able to meet Signe as well. And then one year, a few years back, about 4 years ago, Signe and I went to Vormsi Island, one of the other islands, which is inhabited by what they call the coastal Swedes. And so that in that area, we went to one of the handicraft shops and I was able to buy a few mittens, well, a mitten and glove, no, 2 pairs of gloves there. And one of them is that pair that's pictured here with the little orange edge on it and these beautiful traveling stitches. Because of Signe, I found out about a group on Facebook that's in Estonian that's called the Copy Club, and they replicate historic museum pieces. They did an exhibit of Muhu stockings, which were phenomenal, knit with very fine wool, and that photo shows all the stockings. They're knee-high stockings. And I would have seen that exhibit at the Estonian National Museum, except that was COVID. And so the exhibit still happened. It happened a little late, but then, of course, the trip I was supposed to go on that year was canceled. I did visit the museum, the Estonian National Museum, on my own in 2014. That picture is on the left when I went to study some mittens. On the right is the new one that was built a few years ago. So very modern looking building for the historical artifacts that are kept in it. Oops. There we go. One of the nice things about the museum is they actually have an online directory. You can go and you can view things. If you go to muis.ee, you can do a search on, of course you have to know the word for mittens in Estonian, which is kindad, K-I-N-D-A-D. But you can look around on their website and it will pull up. So the picture on the left here is a picture from the museum website. The picture on the right is a pair of mittens that I did to replicate what was on the in the museum. Another part I mentioned, Haapsalu is a lace place, very pretty town on the coast. And it was a resort town that Russians would go to by train. The train doesn't operate there anymore, but they have this beautiful old train station, this beautiful resort hall on the water. And they have a lace center, Haapsalu Lace Center, which I went to. They have shawls and dresses and things like that. I've got a few items here. I've knit some myself and I've bought some over there. Siri Ryman is the author of a number of Haapsalu lace books, as well as one of the authors of the Estonian Knitting One book. And I met with her when I was there. She is a school teacher by day and a lace knitter and an author. So we actually met at her school, her high school that she teaches at. And this was an exhibit by her students. So they're knitting lace in their handicraft class at school. And we also saw some shawls being blocked and that sort of thing when I was there. This is some of the lace knitting I've done, and it's sitting on one of Siri Ryman's books. Estonian Craft Camp happened in 2014, and that was a great experience with some very good knitters that were there teaching, as well as other handicrafts. And that took place outside of Viljandi. Again, because of the cultural academy that's there, they have a lot of teachers available. So it took place at a manor house nearby called Olusfera. We I showed the tassels on this bag. Well, we learned how to make those in one of the classes. We learned about some muhu knitting, and then also some embroidery. I took a class. We had a day where we went did a field trip, and I went to Seto, which is right on the Russian border, southeast Estonia. And the area has a tradition that, just kind of continues on with their using, wearing traditional dress like we saw on Kinu Island, and then also the traditional knitting techniques and patterns. This was a art museum with the owner who is demonstrating some and showing some silversmithing. And then the costume is on the model in the other picture, and that shows big metal brooches. And they would wear these necklaces and really big metal pieces and for decoration. I mentioned I went on a handicraft tour with Kuli Jakobsen. That was to Seto, that region that I went one day for a field trip. I then was able to go back for a week and meet with different handicraft teachers there and learn a lot of different things. In the lower left corner are some of the samples of the knitting that we did there. We did like 3-color knitting. We did some special traveling stitches, braids, and intarsia in the round. I am going on a trip this year, which will be to an area called Southern Boro. So there's Seto region, which is a little farther east from where I'll be, and then Boro is just to the left in that really dark red area. And this map is a map of who speaks Boro. So there's Estonian, and then there's the people that speak Seto or Boro, so like a dialect. And I did stop and see Kuli Jakobsen at her home one time when I was driving through the countryside on my own. I had called her ahead of time or contacted her ahead of time and said, "Oh, could I stop and visit you?" Sure. So when I was there, we went out in her yard. She picked some rhubarb while I was there, and she made a rhubarb cake. And I was very nicely saying, "Oh, can I help you with that?" So I know she's a fast knitter because she's also a fast sous chef. When I offered to help with the rhubarb, "Oh no, I'm fine." And she started chopping it. She was like, I went, "Okay, yeah, you did not need my help." Places that I teach are Seaver School of Fiber Arts up on Washington Island. I usually do a Baltic extravaganza class, which is being offered this year, and then usually a knitting retreat in the fall. So the one class will be in July, one is in October. Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, I've been contacted by them, and there will be a number of classes there, including Latvian mittens. And their schedule isn't up yet, but it will be. And then also teaching at Michigan Fiber Festival this year for the first time. I've been to the Michigan Fiber Fest, but this will be my first time teaching there. I do have a few books for sale. I didn't bring many along because mostly I sell on Ravelry. So if you're looking for a book, if you do a search on Mary Germain, or Mary Germain and Sandy DeMaster, you'll find books that either I've written on my own or Sandy and I have written together. And so there are some here, and then you can always find them on Ravelry. And then if you were looking to get in touch with me, one of the things I would highly recommend is the Knit Like a Latvian group on Ravelry. It is my favorite group. I just agreed to be a moderator on that group. I'd been asked before and I was like, no. And then this year I ended up saying, I really should. It's my favorite group and decided to. So I am a moderator on that group along with a woman from Germany. Her name's Connie on Walkensaal. So if anybody knows German, I think it's a joke. It's supposed to be like Socken wool would be sock wool, and she's mixed it up and it's Walkensaal instead. But anyway, so she's been a moderator for some time, and then we have two new moderators, two people that I know through Latvian knitting, someone on the East Coast and someone in Minnesota. So there's 4 moderators now. But there's a lot going on in the group, very active. Right now we're doing a mini mitten swap, so there's conversations going on about that. And it's like a Secret Santa type thing. So you get the name of the person you're knitting for, but they don't know who's knitting for them. So we're in the midst of that. But we do knit-alongs. We do technique knit-alongs. A year or 2 ago, we did a double knit thing. I always wanted to try double knitting, and there are some mittens that in Latvia that are double knit, and I thought, well, here's my chance. So that was interesting. So sometimes we're learning right along with everybody, but it's a very active group, so I'd recommend it. And so on Ravelry, I'm M. Germain. And you can also I write a blog, not very often, but when I'm traveling usually. So if you want to read anything else about Latvia or Estonia, you could go to marygthenigger.blogspot.com. And I think that's it. And just to see if there are any questions.
How does the Michigan Fiber Festival compare to Wool Sheep? And what's the difference between Latvia and Estonia?
The knitting or the countries or the
Knitting.
knitting? Okay. So the questions are, how do Wisconsin Sheep and Wool and Michigan Fiber Fest compare? I think they're pretty similar. My friend Sandy had vended at Michigan Fiber Fest for years when she was raising fin sheep. And I think she preferred it, but I did go. I will say the one time I went to Michigan was 2 years ago, and it happened to be a really, really hot time. But that doesn't always happen. So that can be a little hard, but I would say comparable. I enjoyed both. And then in terms of differences between Estonian and Latvian knitting, I would say Estonians outside of the Muhu area, which is very bright, you'll tend to see more in the dark and light, not as many colors is my general feeling on it. But every area of Estonia, every area of Latvia have parishes, and each region or parish has their own patterns that get used. So there is difference even within a country between the Latvian mittens that you see and the Estonian mittens that you see. But in general, I would say they tend to be not quite as colorful, except for the Muhu region. And then in Latvia, you will find some lined mittens. I don't think I've ever seen lined mittens in Estonia. And I think there was somebody behind you. Yes.
Well, I was just curious how you got into this kind of knitting. How did this become your passion?
Oh, well, it was really the start was with Irma, the Latvian woman who came and sold her mittens. So when I owned my shop, I was busy knitting things to inspire everyone to knit, and so mittens were not my thing at that time. But once I no longer owned the shop and had time, I then got enthused about the mittens and really enjoyed getting into it and learning more about it. So it was really through Irma.
Where did they get their yarn? Do they spin it themselves, or are there yarn shops, or?
There's yarn shops. They tend to have either Lithuanian yarn or Latvian yarn, even the Estonians. There is some Estonian yarn being spun. There is a breed of sheep in Estonia and Latvia called a landrace breed that is kind of dying out, and they're trying to keep it from dying out. So it's similar to a Finn sheep, actually, short tail and dual coated. But yes, so they have mills in Latvia for sure, and less in Estonia, but I have been to some mills there too.
How long does it take you to knit a pair of clothes?
It takes a while. So they're knit pretty firmly and on tiny needles. I mean, when I'm knitting them, they're usually, I'm working on size zeros. That one that I picked up that was really fine, I don't know, was I knitting that on 000s or quadruple? Anyway, something that pokes your fingers, that wasn't. On that one, I did one mitten. I was like, okay, that's the experience I wanted. I don't need a pair of those. But anyway, but how long, I don't know. The amount of time it takes to knit a sweater or half a sweater, I don't know. A long time.
What about the women in Latvia?
Oh my gosh. When I was in Latvia the first time, somebody asked that question. There was a pair of gloves with roses on them, tiny rose design. And somebody said, how long does it take to knit that? And the woman, got translated, and she said, 8 hours.
Wow.
And we all went, what? No, not for one mitten, for the pair. Oh yeah, for the pair. Well, that doesn't include blocking. It was the pair of gloves, all those individual fingers. I know, it was crazy.
Do they throw or do they pick?
They usually are picking, and they're picking very close. They hold their fingers very close to the needle, not out like we do. They're just right in there. They'll usually have 2 colors on their left hand, and they're picking off their left hand and really close.
So what weight of yarn is it?
Generally speaking, a lot of these mittens are out of 8-2 wool. So it's like a fingering weight. And then they knit them. I mean, they'll, if you felt this one, it's like bulletproof. This is, I told you, it was knit by Christy USD. It's really tight, and I have to check the gauge on that one. Is there one more?
Yeah, changing the subject, but where was your shop and what years did you have it?
The shop existed from, I think, 1972-ish, I think, till 1996. So I bought the shop from the woman who first started the shop, that's Francie, and I had it from 1985 to 1996, so a little over 10 years. And then I was just ready for a little change from owning a small business. And it was located on Farwell Avenue, just north of Brady Street. And it was weaving, spinning, knitting, basketry, kind of all kinds of things.
In the photographs of the women, they're wearing headscarves.
Yes,
Does that symbolize anything, or do they just do it because it's windy?
you'd be married if you were wearing a headscarf. Yep. Yep. So they were, the older women were wearing scarves. The younger women weren't wearing scarves. And then there's, I think there's something with sort of a crown sort of thing that gets worn sometimes. But anyway, the scarves definitely is married.
And do they wear them all the time, or just for special events?
The older women you will see wearing, the Kinu was kind of off, it was an island. So they kept their tradition of wearing traditional dress for much longer than on the mainland. So they are starting to switch from it, but you'll see a lot more of the older women wearing traditional dress throughout the day.
I'm a newer knitter. What are traveling stitches?
Traveling stitches are where you usually have a pearl background, and then you take knit stitches and they travel kind of over the top of that. So it's kind of like cables, but usually single stitches usually for traveling, and they're knit on a pearl ground.
I did a retreat with Beth Brown.
Did you see her in one of the pictures?
Oh, I did.
She was in one of them.
Oh, I didn't notice. Hardest retreat I've ever done.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God, I was like, so tense because we worked for 8 hours straight.
She's a great teacher, and she has a great way of demonstrating,
Yep.
and she'll work you. Yes, I have had a class with her.
Yeah, and it was a Gansey, so we did one of those
Yes.
Gansey sweaters. And I just was looking at my notes, the Latvian fingerless glove, which I didn't even finish one.
Yes.
Because you were supposed to make the entire little sweater, Gansey sweater, and the Latvian in like 2 days.
Yes. Yes.
And that's-
Thank you. I know there's more questions, but I'll be here, so if you want to come up and ask any questions, because my timer went out. That was 1 hour, so I don't want to go over that. Oh, thank you very much.
So we can do the brown bag. Molly, can I ask you to come help with it? Because I don't know what I'm doing. So anybody that has a brown bag, if you can bring it up to this table. Right now I only have 3.
Okay, for those who are new here, I heard someone ask, what is the Brown Bag Project? It's an exchange we do every year. And what happens is I will put a skein, a small project's worth of yarn if it's a small skein, because I know I got in trouble one year. I gave a kg a ball of yarn and it only had 81 yards on it. But a small project's worth. You put it in a brown bag, you get a number, your bag goes on a table to swap with a bunch of other bags. And so I picked up number 7. I don't know who put number 7 on the table. And there was her yarn inside that I made, or Dan's, that I made a project that I am going to give back to her tonight. And the person who made something with my yarn doesn't have it with her tonight. So I will be giving number 7 their project. And yeah, let's start with, is this Donna? Donna knit something with bag number 2 for Jane Kivlin. With Donna and Jane.
Jane is in here.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm down.
Oh.
I'm Jane Fiddler. But I'm really Carol Turnett. But Jane had hip replacement surgery and is hobbling around.
So this is what Donna,
Jane's, right?
that's what Donna made for Jane. So why don't you take it out and let's show off what Jane's getting.
So I'm sure she would love to be here, but she's moving around the house with a walker. Oh, lovely. Look at that.
Beautiful.
Beautiful cowl. Can you see it? It's gradations of gray and 10 off whites. Thank you, Deb.
Okay,
Jane thinks you and she wrote.
number 3, Claudia knit something for Judy Humble.
Judy?
This is your dress, whatever.
Claudia's not here. You're supposed to come up and explain it. You're getting the neat part.
Okay, so Claudia's going to explain this to Judy.
So Judy was kind enough to give me lace yarn. So the yarn is, let me just tell you here, Willow Stream. I used most of it. And she has a new scarf. The pattern I used was luscious lace scarf.
Jackie, are you gonna publish these?
I didn't want to.
Are you gonna publish these like you have in the
I got a
past?
list.
I mean, somebody's gotta put a list together.
Do you want to keep it out or do you want to leave it with me?
I'll leave it.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
All right, and just to reverse that, Judy knit for Claudia.
Number 4?
Nope.
This is number 5.
What happened to 4?
We're skipping around because Judy and Claudia ended up knitting for each other.
Okay, so Claudia's yarn was from Ireland. Or at least it was.
Yeah, no, I bought it.
And it was a little bit stiff. Really woolly. So I patterned called multi-directional diagonal scarf. Sure. And then I added some,
Can't really hear you.
sorry.
Hey guys, we're still having part of our program back there.
The yarn that Claudia gave me was 100% wool from Ireland, a homespun, not like the homespun we're used to not liking here, most of us. And then I added some alpaca silk to it to make it a little bit softer. So she also gets a scarf.
Thank you. Oh, that's.
Wool with an added fiber.
That's gorgeous.
Multi-directional diagonal scarf.
Thank you.
Number 4. Kelly knit for Donna. Kelly is a Troy.
I might not be able to hear you.
It's me.
Kelly knit for Donna, number
Kelly's over
4.
here.
Come on up, Kelly.
It is either, if you add a ribbon, it can be a hat or it can just be a,
Can't hear you.
project.
So this can be, if you add a ribbon, the pattern is it can either be a hat or a scarf.
I think it's
Called duet, D-U-E-T.
Yeah.
Easy lace pattern, I'm in later, so thank you. And I think it was alpaca yarn. A little yarn.
Number 6, Jane knit for KG.
Jane's on here.
Jane Kivlin?
Okay. The next one is I knitted for Colleen.
No, Katie's here.
KG's here.
Okay, KG, come on up and we'll see what you got.
Oh, it's there?
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Dave Turner, yeah.
Jane Kivlin.
Yeah, here it is.
Mhm.
I just opened it there. Let's see what you got. Okay. 56.
This pattern is called the Ronda shawl. RONDA.
Yeah. Yay. Yes.
And what was the yarn?
The yarn is Sundara yarn sock.
Like how the dark was right around the lacy.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, yes.
Colleen?
So the name of the pattern is Sahara
Tilting
cowl,
block cowl.
tilting block cowl.
And you knit that one?
Molly.
I'm making
Yes.
The yarn is
Have that?
Knit Circus Yarns Divine DK, so it's a hand-painted yarn.
Yep.
Very soft. And I had to play yarn chicken. So you also got an Arrrowhead lace headband. And I didn't work the end because I wanted people to see that when I was done, there was this much left.
Wow.
You won.
So I am knitting for Molly. Do I have it done tonight? No, because I may fail at the brown bag. I did the Mount Mary gathering with my daughter last night. It was a month. But the pattern that I'm doing is the Antler hat, tin can knits. And Molly had given some beautiful, it was navy blue. I love the dark color of it. And so I thought with cables, it would be really pretty. So,
It's this yarn.
so Antler hat is coming for Molly. Next
Yay.
week.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yes.
Number 8, KG was knitting for Kelly. Is it Troyce?
So, I used all but this. I think you had picked it off of.
I think you had picked it off the table last week. That's so fine. So I used the lace pattern. Once before, someone asked me to make a baby sweater and a baby bonnet, and the directions were, I couldn't figure it out, but I could easily call London to get it. And it was all with wraps and turns, and it's a beautiful lace pattern. So that even though the yarn wasn't your choice, I added a scarf pin. So it is a scarf. It's built on 6 patterns of 6 plus 3. So I have it. Do I give it to you, the pattern, if somebody wants it? Yeah, okay, I've got it. So, yeah. Okay.
So that's it. I have these patterns. I'm going to give them to Judy so that we can get them published.
So that is our program. There is some information on Pathfinders. If you weren't here last month and you want some, it's on this table. I'll put it back by the name tags if you want more information on them. And I think that's it. Long meeting.
You're here, you're here.
Also, don't forget there's